The Macapagal Administration, December 30, 1961 to December 30, 1965. So while President Macapagal worked to end the graft and corruption to restore the Philippine economy. During that time, there was also rise in consumer goods and persisting peace and order issues. He also alleviated poverty by providing solutions for unemployment. The administration's relations with the international community. The Philippines became a founding member of MAFILINDO, or Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. It is also called the Greater Malayan Confederation, formed because the three countries were involved in colonialism. As you can see from the table, Malaysia was ruled by Britain, the Philippines was ruled by the Spanish, and Indonesia was ruled by the Dutch. Its purpose was also to prevent the formation of the Federation of Malaysia and for its independence from Britain. It was seen as a regional association that aimed to solve national and regional problems. Like what they said, it was for Asian solutions by Asian nations for Asian problems. Evolution of pillars of Philippine foreign policy. The first is the North Borneo claim in 1962. The Philippines had its own claim in Borneo, which is also called Sabah. This was claimed by the Sultanate of Sulu to ensure against territorial instability and restlessness in the area. That was also to safeguard the region. Next is Mafilindo in 1963, which was mentioned earlier. Then Vietnam War in 1965. Before the end of the president's term in 1965, he persuaded the Congress to send troops to South Vietnam. But this was blocked by Marcos, who defeated him in the November 1965 polls. Next is the Marcos administration, December 30, 1965 to September 21, 1972. The administration's relations with the international community. The first one is greater independence from the United States. Marcos put an end to this because he saw that there was very limited and insufficient United States military aid for the Philippines, and it wasn't really guaranteed. Second is the greater Philippine control over the U.S. military bases. The president changed the Philippine foreign policy to promote the Philippines' resources for its own security. Third is the move to end the Laurel-Langley Agreement in 1974. The agreement was halted because the provided treatment for American and Philippine trade was not renewed or renegotiated. Fourth is President Ferdinand Marcos' emphasis on Asian regionalism. He promoted solidarity among neighboring countries with common interests, problems, and aspirations. Next is gearing towards the Third World, Philippine diplomatic relations with less developed countries. This was because President Marcos did not want to dwell and rely only to the Americans, but he also really wanted to expand relations to other countries as well, such as Middle East, China, and Russia, forging closer diplomatic ties with Muslim countries in the Middle East. The Philippine government was able to establish diplomatic ties with Muslim countries that were associated with the Moro National Liberation Front, or MNLF, to provide imports of oil to uplift the Philippine economy and to help develop Mindanao. And lastly, direction toward developmental diplomacy, catalyst for neutralism and self-reliance. This was the very first approach done by President Marcos in 1969, which was also called the New Development Policy. It was also his call for less dependence from the United States. The evolution of pillars of Philippine foreign policy. The Philippines was directed to be less dependent on the United States, because the president knew that the American bases were easy access for attacking. Thus, his priority was the Philippines' greater control of the United States military bases. Claro M. Recto also pointed out that they were magnets for attacks from communist rebels. This was also to avoid their antagonists, which are Soviet Union and China. Then the Laurel-Langley Agreement, which wasn't renewed during his presidential term. The key Philippine political figures responsible for shaping foreign relations. The first one is President Ferdinand Marcos himself. Next is Senator Claro M. Recto. His stance regarding foreign policies greatly influenced Marcos. As a jurist, Recto's stand was solely for Asian solidarity against colonialism. Then Narciso Ramos, as the Foreign Affairs Secretary during that time, he was sent out to sign the Bangkok Declaration, which was for the formation of the ASEAN in 1967. ASEAN expanded from its predecessor, which was Mafilindo in 1962. Then the First Lady Imelda Marcos. She was instructed to visit Libya to establish relations with their president. The Martial Law Declaration in September 21, 1972. The reason why the president imposed this was to suppress civil conflict and the threat of a communist takeover, which followed a series of bombings in Manila. It happened in Plaza Miranda in Quiapo. This was blamed on the Communist Party under Jose Maria Sison. It was also because there was an assassination attempt on Juan Ponce Enrile.